I found myself in the men's room wiping vomit from my face. So traditionally, when you say $1 million business, what they're referring to is a business that has sales equal to or over $1 million. That would absolutely fit with the sales of SRK Cycles. My wife Rachel said to me one time, I came home and she was thinking about something, and she said to me how proud she was of me for being a successful entrepreneur. And I kind of stepped back and I thought, the line between successful entrepreneur and that guy that jumps from job to job to job, never satisfied, and his in-laws think he's a bum, is very fine. I mean, I had over 36 jobs before I went to college. Always had another job. Always had think about it, that guy always has some big ideas. I would say there's one or two things that person needs to change, and he will be an extremely successful person. And for me, it was just discipline and focus. So where this story starts is probably about 5 years ago. I had been a internet manager for a large used car dealership. I'd been there for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was buying motorcycles wholesale from private individuals, Craigslist, traveling up to 8 to 10 hours, to buy the bike, bringing it back, and then selling it to other dealerships such as like Wow Motorsports in Marietta, and a couple other dealerships that I was working with. From being the internet manager in the car dealership, I was also a buyer for a little while, which was a lot of fun. You go to the auction, buy stuff. I learned so much from learning the automotive industry. It's very interesting. It's very exciting stuff, and you get to meet a lot of cool people. But the whole time, I'm kind of planning my escape. I know I want something more. I know I want something different. I know I want to do my own thing, and I've always loved motorcycles. So while I'm at this dealership, I'm helping them sell cars online, getting stuff on eBay, and really hopefully optimizing the internet to sell more cars and starting to ship cars. It was very exciting. It was very fun. Just really showing them that the internet is not this redheaded stepchild. When the internet started coming out, or even up to a couple years ago, they would look at it as, oh, someone just walked in the door. This person's extremely important. Someone on the internet, we'll get to them later. And we started changing that shift of, hey, not everyone who walks in the door is actually a real buyer, or not everyone that buys is actually going to walk through the door. And that was a big paradigm shift. So for about 2 years while I was there, I was always kind of working through my mind, and I enjoyed this, working through my mind of how am I going to, what am I going to do? What's my own thing? And I must have I want to do something with bikes. I want to start my own dealership. I must have come up with a 500 different domain names, and none of them worked. I was trying to figure out that awesome.com that I couldn't get. And I had this unclear idea of what I wanted to do. And through all these different things of working the dealership and all the pieces of the puzzle started coming in, but it was still very clear. It wasn't until one day where someone went in and they wanted to trade in a motorcycle to the dealership. Now, normally we wouldn't do that. I'm the type of person where, hey, I know bikes. I jumped in there and I said, we can trade this bike in. Here's the amount we're going to trade it for. And they gave it to the guy. The customer was fine. He traded the bike in. Now we own a motorcycle. I was told from some of the other people, I think the sales manager was like, hey, I called one of my other guys. I said, these bikes are not good. People don't like these. I think we bought it wrong. And I was like, well, let's just see. Within 12 hours, we sold that bike with a $4,000 markup. Well, it wasn't $4,000 markup. It was, we sold the bike, we made maybe a couple thousand on the front end and a couple thousand on the back end, which would be warranty and financing and stuff. So we made pretty good money on it. With the bike we sold that to, we traded in another bike. We sold that bike within 24 hours. And then we made $2,000 on that bike. That bike, we traded in another bike at the same time, and we sold that bike within a week, and then we made maybe, another $1,500 to $1,800 on that bike. All this happened within a week, and that's when I realized the piece of the puzzle that was missing fell into place. I can help dealerships trade in motorcycles, and then I buy them and then I sell them. This is a killer idea. So that's where the idea of SRK Cycles kind of originates. So I came up with the idea. I wrote a business plan. So I came up with a business plan and I presented it to the owner of the dealership, thinking that I could do this under his dealership umbrella, because I didn't want to start my own dealership. That was a big deal, and I didn't have any money. And, he had some good, valid questions for me. And about this time, I came into the classic entrepreneurial dilemma that most entrepreneurs will come into. And that is, do you want 100% of nothing because you don't have the resources to start it up? Or do you want a portion of something that could be very successful? And that was really hard for me. And I knew that was a dilemma. And most of the time, I'm like, I want a piece. I want a piece of something instead of all of nothing. But that's not the choice I made. I chose, you know what? I want a third option. I don't want to give up anything. I want to own this whole thing. So at the same time that I quit my job at the dealership, me and my wife were expecting our second child. There was a guy that I knew from church. His name was Guy, and he owned a little car dealership. And I used to see him at church when I was a kid. I used to see him at the auctions. When I was a buyer, my dad said, "Hey, why don't you talk to Guy?" I didn't really know him, but he's like, "Hey, why don't you talk to Guy?" So something someone told me a long time ago, not even that long ago, 2 years ago. They said, you can almost judge how successful someone is by how many awkward conversations they've had. And so anytime you think like, oh man, I don't want to do this. This is an awkward conversation. Look at it with that different mindset, because it really is how it is. Every time, if you're going to ask for more money, if you're going to ask for an opportunity or whatever, it's an awkward conversation because you don't do it all the time. So I asked him if I could sell motorcycles through his dealership under the umbrella of his dealership. And yeah, he thought about it. He wrote some stuff up, and he's like, yeah, we'll do it with this split. We'll use my money. We'll do it like this. And I thought that was awesome, and it was awesome. And what this did was this allowed me to get in the door, sell motorcycles, get my name out there, see if the idea even works without me paying for any overhead or without me having any large upfront costs, because I really had none. I didn't really have any money. The term self-made man has always made me kind of cringe. Though the amount of arrogance that you need to have to tell people that your success is completely all your own is just, almost blows my mind away. I mean, when you look at if you've succeeded in anything, even the people who were negative towards you, you have to give them some credit of your success, because that's what helped make you. A lot of my credit comes from, I would never call myself a self-made man, of course, because of the line I just said. A lot of my credit we would go to, the mentors that I've had, but mainly my dad, who's always been there for me, always listened to my ridiculous ideas and helped guiding me through that. If you look at it, if you have if you have a father or a father figure, or someone out there, who can do that for you, you are incredibly blessed, and you are very lucky, and you really don't have anything to complain about. Now, this was a very small dealership, and when we first started the first month, we only had, a bike would come in, I'd sell the bike. 2 bikes would come in, I'd sell 2 bikes. We never really had an inventory. If you came in to look at one bike and you didn't like that bike, that was kind of it. Now we have a big inventory. If you come in and look at one bike and you don't like it, we might have something else that you might like, maybe we don't. And that was very comfortable for me. The next month was very similar. We sold a couple bikes, but we never really had more than 2 or 3 bikes in at any given moment. It wasn't until the 3rd month that came in, and I kind of stepped back and I realized, holy cow, we're sitting on an inventory of like $50,000, $60,000. We had maybe 10 or 12 bikes, and this just horrified me, because I feel like now I'm getting out of my comfort zone, and I was actually losing sleep over this, just thinking about it. I was worried, I was concerned. I remember, because I was sleeping in the guest bedroom at the time, because I don't like sleeping near little babies because they have like erratic breathing, and I can try that. I'm always like, are they still breathing? You know what I mean? And then the baby's like, and I'm like, oh, good, baby. I can't stand it. So I sleep in the guest bedroom for a couple months. I remember laying down in bed, and I couldn't sleep. And, I was praying a lot about this. What I came up with was that if God wants this to succeed, it's going to succeed. Me worrying about it will not help it. I think the Bible verse is, something along the lines of, you can't add a day to your life from worrying about it. Even the birds and the flowers look awesome, and they don't worry. God just does it. So if God wants this business to succeed, then we're good. I'll succeed. You know what I mean? If I work hard, it'll work out. If God does not want it to succeed, I don't want it to succeed. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go against God. If he doesn't want something to work out, the last place I want to be is on the opposite side of God, being like, no, let's make this work. That's crazy. So I kind of came to this reality. I was like, either way, I'm fine. Either way, it's going to be good. So I kind of made myself, a little pact, not a pact, but I kind of agreement with God. And I said, I will not worry about this for the next 30 days, the next month, starting from the 1st. I'm not going to worry about it. And we're just going to see how it goes. It's kind of a one-way deal, I guess. And anytime that thought would come in, a little bit of fear, anxiety would come into my mind, I would just kind of just knock it out. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm not going to think about it. And what I ended up doing was spending my extra energy, not worrying, spending it on work. We had a lot of stuff to do. We had work, and I spent that extra time on work and strategy and planning for the future. And that first month that I did that, we sold 14 motorcycles. We sold more bikes than we've ever had. I made more money than I ever did, and it was amazing. So then the next month I did the same thing, and I just got to the point where I don't worry about it. I legitimately have zero stress, very little stress, maybe occasionally, very little stress about the owning and running this dealership. So during that time when I was selling motorcycles under the umbrella of Fine Cars by Guy, we grew. We grew very fast. We grew very fast, and we grew pretty big. We actually had, I think within 6 months of start date to 6 months, we had the largest used motorcycle inventory in Lancaster County. And we pretty much maintained that. We've maintained that status. We're much bigger now, but ever since then. But we had the building packed out. He was trying to run a business. I'm trying to run a business. We had the building packed out. There was not very much friction between me and Guy. Guy's a very godly man. I loved working with him. But there was no, he might say there was friction. I would say there was no friction because I would just, I didn't do the best job of this, but I would just try to submit, hey, all right, whatever you say. He was the guy. So I just kind of did it. But it just came to the time where I needed to start my own dealership. I needed to be on my own. If I would have known at this point how much paperwork and dealing with the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I would have to go through, I probably wouldn't have done it. Now looking back, would I have to do it all over again? Yes, I would absolutely do it all over again. Someone once told me that the automotive industry in Pennsylvania is the most heavily regulated industry in the whole state. Well, of course, I had to ask him what was the least regulated industry. He said law. I guess that makes sense. So we had found this building. It used to be like a porta potty company. So they had just this thing filled with porta potties. It smelled like that blue stuff in porta potties. The rent was about $3,000 a month. Little did I know, I knew residential leases. You sign a lease for 12 months, you can get out of it. It's not a big deal. When you sign a commercial lease, if you sign a 1 year, which is too short, but if you sign a 1 year commercial lease at $3,000 a month, you owe them $36,000. They don't care if your company goes under tomorrow. You sign that dot, you owe them $36,000 in the next year. That's a little horrifying. So I found that out, and that was a little scary. We got the shortest lease that we possibly could on this place. But around the same time, I had also just sold my rental property that I bought when I was like 19 or 20. So I sold that, put around 30 grand in my pocket. That gave me a little bit of cushion or seed money to get this whole thing started. So we signed an 18-month lease on this 5,000 square foot building, which at the time seemed huge, and I was like, there's no way we're going to fill this building with bikes. And then, within a year later, it's packed, and I feel like we need more space. I found a guy that I could pay him. He did all the paperwork for the state. Then a couple months, we were SRK Motors doing business as SRK Cycles. We had a building. We had a license to sell motor vehicles in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now we need the money. So this ends up being my Shark Tank moment. I went to a bunch of different banks to see if I can get a loan. Now at this point, I've been running, successfully for, about maybe a year and a half, maybe close to 2 years. They were all interested to talk to me, but when it came to actually doing anything, no one wanted to give me a loan. One bank even went so far to say that we could give you a $100,000 loan if you had $100,000 and you can put that in one of our accounts, and we can put a freeze on that. So you're telling me that if I give you $100,000 to hold in your account, you will loan me back that $100,000 with interest? Yeah, I'm not. That's a stupid idea. Kind of rule of thumb, Banks are only willing to lend businesses money when they don't need the money, when they already have the money and they don't actually need banks, which is just kind of ridiculous. So after that was kind of frustrating. After that, I had my own little Thanos moment. I'll do it myself. And when I mean I'll do it myself, I mean I'm going to go find a venture capitalist to give me money. So through some contacts, I had a meeting with a venture capitalist. This is my Shark Tank moment. I've got to do a presentation. I got to do this pitch. This reminds me of the first presentation I had to do in college. It was Law 101. It was Intro to Law 101. I found myself in the men's room wiping vomit from my face. And if you didn't do this presentation, you failed the class. And there was people in the class that they're like, I'm not doing it. I think at that point they just quit college. So I'm feeling very similar to this. I'm feeling very nervous. Instead of, if I do good on the presentation, I get a good grade or I pass the class. If I can do good on this presentation, someone loans me $200,000 and I'm able to support my family and potentially create my dream job. So I had to convince this guy to let me borrow $200,000 to sell motorcycles on the internet using YouTube videos. But I had an ace up my sleeve during this presentation. And the last thing I said in this presentation, I think was what really made it an easy situation for him, an easy decision for him. None of this money that I'm borrowing is going to be used for renovations or payroll or modifications to the building or computers or anything. I got the money for that. The money I'm borrowing will either be in one of two places. Motorcycle inventory. I've proven that I know how to flip motorcycles. Or cash in the bank. It's either going to be one of those two spots. And I said, feel free to stop by anytime to look at my books, to look at my bank account and see, okay, he's got motorcycles, there's the inventory, there's the value of the inventory, or there's the money in the bank account. So after about a 20-minute meeting, we shook hands and he said, how do you want the check? So I took the largest check I've ever seen in my life, deposited it. I probably showed it to my wife first, actually. Deposit it in my bank account. And instead of partying or celebrating or anything, we got to work. We had a lot of work to do. Business 101, SWOT analysis. Strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats. If you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, and you're not keeping your eye on, and you failed, it's because you didn't keep an eye on one of those four things. So where I'm at right now, that kind of leads us into 2017. A lot has happened and changed since then. We'll make that in the next video. We'll see you guys later. Don't forget to subscribe.